Welcome to the Home Care Experience with T&A, the podcast where industry experts Amy Taylor and Troy Brooks dive into the heart of home care, hospice, and everything in between. In this episode, Amy and Troy unravel the complexities of Medicaid Rate Enhancement, a crucial reimbursement opportunity for providers of personal assistance services. You'll learn what it is, how to qualify, how to stay compliant, and why a misstep could cost your agency thousands. This episode delivers the insight you need to protect your margins and support your staff. Let's join Amy and Troy for this essential conversation.
Hey, this is Troy and Amy, and welcome to the Home Care Experience with T&A. And today we're talking about rate enhancement, which is foreign territory for me, but I know what it is. I know people like it. I know when they lose it, they bitch about it. So this is for personal assistance services only, right?
Yeah.
Medicaid?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't get it for like just willy-nilly?
No.
Okay.
No, it's PAS only. I mean, there are nursing homes have their own.
That's a different animal.
That's a whole nother animal that I could not even in a 5-hour podcast explain. Too many moving parts in that one. That one's complicated. It's made me cry.
There's some clever fraud schemes for nursing facilities. I mean, they always get caught, but I mean, they're still clever. I mean, I appreciate creativity.
Well, we'll talk offline about that.
But so what is rate enhancement? It sounds great.
Okay, it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. They enhance the rate at which you're reimbursed by giving you an extra little piece. So they being HHSC, I guess.
Watching our pronouns again because we say they a lot. Yeah, HHSC.
Yes, HHSC. I still call HHSC DADS.
Oh, yeah.
And I still call Provider Finance Department rate analysis.
Yeah.
Because that one's still fairly new. But technically, it's Provider Finance Department that handles this, at least the monitoring of it. So rate enhancement there are levels with home care. So there are different levels. Each level, I believe, is 5 cents. So you can go from a level 0, which means you're non-participant, means you don't get anything. That's the base hourly rate that you're reimbursed for PAS services. Excuse me. And of course, there's priority, non-priority. And it does apply to Star Plus. So you got your traditional Medicaid.
Yes.
Is that what we call it? And then, so your waiver program straight from Medicaid. And then the Star Plus MCOs are supposed to follow what the state does. So if you're a level 23 with the state, you're supposed to be a level 23 with the Star Plus carriers. And they're supposed to do their own monitoring. I don't know much about that because I don't know what they're doing or not doing. So we'll focus on the state and how it's handled there. And I feel like the state each year keeps pulling more and more into the state's monitoring system, even if it's Star Plus. And I'm waiting for them to start making Star Plus recoupments and Star Plus overpayment determinations on Star Plus units through rate analysis kind of piece, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So you apply for levels and it depends on the state's budget. It depends nothing on the provider. It depends on the state budget as to how much they will give you. So let's say you're just getting in the program. Usually I think you can only go up like 3 levels a year. So keep that in mind. If you get knocked down, you can only come back up like 3 levels per year. So to get to a level, I think it goes all the way to level 35, but to get to level 30, I mean, that's going to take you 10 years to get there. And so that's what it is. It's an extra rate. It's an enhancement that's added to each hour of reimbursement that you receive. But it comes with stipulations and compliance requirements.
Okay.
So
let me ask you, so let's say I have something happen. I'm at level 35, everything's bebopping along, there's some hiccup, and I lose my contract, I have to get a new contract, and I'm at a lower level. What does that mean business-wise?
You start, as far as I know, you start all over when you have a contract termination.
But my employees are getting paid like I got rate enhancement at level 35. So
That's why you don't give raises for rate enhancement. You give bonuses.
Okay.
Because you cannot give a bonus, but you cannot take away an hourly wage. So let's get there. So first it starts with enrollment. It's always, open enrollment is always the month of July. It's a very simple form. It's online. You go online and you say, yes, I want to participate in rate enhancement. Here, I want level 10. And they will give you whatever they can give you, if anything. So then that is done in July, and the rate period starts September 1st. And so usually they make that announcement in October, September. I'm sure they're behind on that. So it might be September, October. That's usually what we see. And they put out a letter, which you can always go download from the state site, that shows what contract is at what level. So it's listed by contract level or contract number, and tells you what level for priority, what level for non-priority for the current fiscal year.
So your individual contract number?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Public information.
Yeah, wow.
No names.
Yeah.
And that rate runs on the federal state fiscal year, 9/1 to 8/31. So if you're a calendar year provider, which most of you are, from 9/1 to 12/31 could be one rate, and from 1/1 to 8/31 could have been a different rate. So it depends on, that's only if, well, it could be a different level of enhancement, but the actual reimbursement rate could also be different, but that would only be if there was an actual increase in the Medicaid reimbursement rate, which we don't see on a regular basis. I know we went like 10 years without one recently. But anyway, so that's the enrollment period. So you enroll, super simple. You get awarded based on what they can award, based on the budget, how many people are applying to be in the program, how many people are dropping out of the program, all those variables. Then the problem is when they don't have their award levels announced and you're already getting paid for September claims, but it's at the old rate, then they got to catch you up. I don't know enough about all that, but the state handles it. So then, but what is your compliance? Like, what's the catch? Let's think about that. What's the catch? There is a catch. So the catch is that you have to then spend 90% of the attendant component of that rate on attendant care. So what qualifies is you can spend it on attendant wages, bonuses, the employer tax that goes with those wages that were paid, any benefits that you might offer, or mileage. But it doesn't get to go to your administrative staff, to your rent, to anything else. But if you listened really close, I said the attendant component of that rate. So when you look at the rate sheet, it's broken into two components. The attendant component, and I'm not going to get these words right.
Okay.
And then the administrative piece. The administrative piece is, I'm a little dyslexic, it's either $2.07 or $2.70. So 2.70 or 2.07. I think it's 270. That is the same number on every level. So for every level, whether you're participating or level 35, $2.70 of your $13 reimbursement or $18 reimbursement is allotted to go to administration. That's to cover your administrative fixed overhead stuff. Then your attendant piece of that rate, that's the part that 90% of that, if you're in rate enhancement, 90% of that has to go to direct care. An expense for direct care wages, bonuses, taxes, mileage, or benefits. So every year when we do your cost report, there's a piece of it that measures your spending requirement. Did you spend what you were supposed to spend? And you can measure that anytime throughout the year. All you've got to figure is what is your average cost per hour for your direct care compared to what your spending requirement is. Because, and I kind of wish I'd have pulled up a rate sheet, but let's just go with easy numbers again. Let's say your attendant component is $10 because that's easy math for me. And then the administrative component is $270. So your total reimbursement is going to be $1,270. Well, the $270 goes to admin. We don't care. But of that $10, I got to make sure 90%, aka $9, goes directly to attendant cares. So then my spending requirement per hour is $9. So then all you do is you add up. The easiest way, what I tell people to do, is let's say you're going to measure it quarterly. So let's say it's second quarter and you take payroll from 4/1 to 6/30 and run a payroll journal and look at total attendant wages, if there are any bonuses, add your employer-only taxes, not the employee withholding. This should be gross wages, employer taxes. Let's pretend that the agency offers benefits, but none of the attendants accept the benefits. Therefore, there are no benefits. That's usually the case, not always. So you got no benefits and you don't pay any mileage. So you're just working with wages and taxes. Add that up and divide by number of hours paid for attendance. And you're only doing this for your attendance. So it's critical that your payroll is segregated. These are attendants. They're doing attendant care versus these are administrative people doing admin. Or what if you've got an attendant that's doing an in-service or an administrative function, or they actually fill in the office for you. You need to make sure they have a separate pay code for that, right? So let's say you got Susie Q attendant, and she's usually out in the field, but you're short-staffed in the office, and so she's covering the office for a day. She's got on her paycheck and on her payroll forms, she's got her attendant wage is, let's say it's $9 or $8.50. And I know, guys, we got that new minimum wage and all that, and I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. So I'm using numbers from a few years ago, back when you could pay $8.50 and get away with it. So she's paid $8.50 for that, but she's also paid $8.50 to sit in the office. But that's a separate line item that just says admin, right? So you want to be able to segregate that because you want to make sure you're measuring attendant payroll hours and figure the average there. And if you come up and your average between wages, so for instance, I had a client, she started everybody at $8 an hour. But some attendants have worked up to $9.50 an hour. Well, what's the average amongst all attendants for that period? And so if you come up, your spending requirement, we already calculated, was $9. If you come up and you calculate that your actual spending is $8.95, you're close, but close isn't good enough. You're 5 cents short. Well, 5 cents over 100,000 hours adds up. But what Troy was getting at in the beginning of what happens when you lose that level, that gets deep. It doesn't get deep. It's not hard. Mm-hmm. It's severe is how I would say it. So you might have an overpayment and they'll recoup it. They don't let you pay it back. I think if it's over a certain amount, they'll let you pay it back. But we really try to avoid it. This is a timely topic, and we're going to make sure it gets released right here at the 1st of April. We're in 2025. Because the great thing about this is you can accrue bonuses to make up for that deficit. So let me get there in a minute. So let's say you don't know anything. You didn't measure your spending. You just did your cost report. The cost report or attendant compensation report or accountability report, it does not measure on the face of the cost report what your spending was. And it doesn't tell you if you spend enough or not. That's a separate calculation that we personally do for our clients because we want to know, right? So you submit your cost report. It goes through the desk audit. Everything's good. It says, hey, you got a recoupment. And you don't argue it. And then you're stuck with it. Okay, well, the recoupament's one thing. Let's say it's $5,000. You're like, oh, I don't mind. It's $5,000. Let them recoup it. That's not what matters. What matters is that now you're going to get dropped to the level at which you actually achieved. So in that example, I don't know what level you would have been at, but let's just say you're at level 10 with your $9 spending requirement. Because you were 5 cents short, it's going to drop you a level. So now you're only at level 9. So then you got to work your way back up. But
So the cost is more than $5,000.
Yes, because now they're recouping $5,000 for that period, but now you're already, by this time, you're already 6-8 months into the current period. You're going to have a recoupment for that period, and you're going to get dropped a level, which means it's going to be another whole year before you can get back up to where you were. So it's a kind of a snowball. Mm-hmm. And so it really impacts you for about 3 years. But that's best case. What if you have a big overpayment and it drops you 10 levels? I mean, it takes you a long time to build back up to that, because there are years that you request, hey, I want 3 more levels. They don't give you any. This past year, I don't think anybody got new levels. So you're not guaranteed that they're going to add on. This is a privilege program, not a
entitlement.
Not an entitlement. So it's important that you measure that. So let's say you're working with somebody, or you've listened to this podcast and you're like, hey, I need to go calculate my spending requirement and where I'm at. And so you're measuring that as you go, or at least at cost report time. So that cost report's due in April. As long as you're a 12/31 year end, you can say, hey, we didn't spend enough, so we're going to accrue a bonus, because the cost report's accrual basis. So we can say we're going to put a $50,000 bonus on the books, and that's going to increase your attendant compensation. It's going to make you meet spending. You've got until June 30th to pay that out. So you didn't even have to pay it in the first part of the year. You've got until June 30th to pay it out. So that's why this is timely. So you've got time now to calculate for the prior year, see where you came in. If you came short, then you need to accrue a bonus, but you also have to pay it out. So you can't just put it on the books and then ignore it. And then you got to be careful. Make sure when you pay it out as a bonus, it doesn't just say bonus or attendant bonus. You want to make sure it says prior year bonus. So we call that PY bonus, because so prior year in this case is 2024. Well, so now when I'm looking at 2025, let's say I had to accrue bonuses for 24. I'm going to pay them out in April of 25. That's going to be on my 2025 expenses, unless you're super accrual basis in your day-to-day books. But even still, it's on your payroll report. No matter how you do it, it's on your payroll report as a bonus in 2025. You want to make sure you don't double dip and count that when you're calculating your 25 spending requirement or actual spending. Because it can easily get included with the wages that you're using to calculate, how am I doing this year? So you got to be careful there.
So can the bonus go to employees that were hired in the new year, or they have to be employees from the prior year?
That gets gray, and it's got to go to attendance for sure.
Okay.
But I don't know that there's anything that says it has to go to an employee that was on service during that year.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep. So in practical purposes, we don't ever look at it. I'm like, $50,000 needs to go to attendance, pay it out. I always get asked that question, just pay it to everybody. Because, depending on the size of the agency, that might just be $100 per employee, So now, that is why you want to do your spending. You want your wages, your hourly wage, to be what you can afford and what you want it to be, regardless of your level 35 of rate enhancement. Now, I understand it's fine to start eking up a little bit, but just know if something drastic happened and you lost that level, if you had to do a change of ownership on your contract and you guys start over, you can't go drop. You can legally, you could drop everybody's wages, but you would have a mass walkout. Attendants would leave, they'd go somewhere else. So the better way to manage that is through bonuses. And you can also do it I know a lot of agencies, they're like, we typically have to pay bonuses every year. So they'll do some at Christmas and count that. That counts as your attendant compensation. So go ahead and throw some bonuses in there at Christmas time. Maybe you do one in summer, throw some little bonuses out there. Or maybe you just want to recognize over and above. You never, to me, this is a general, this goes across everybody and everywhere. Do it via bonus, not via pay increase. It's kind of like the flip side of that is, I always preach also that, let's say you get a bonus at work, like a big bonus. Don't go incur new debt. You just got a bonus. You didn't get a pay raise. You got a bonus. So sure, go buy you a big 85-inch TV, which I highly recommend. 85-inch frame TV, it's phenomenal. But don't go buy a new Corvette that you're going to be paying on for 6 or 8 or 12 years, kind of thing. So
Unless you got an absolutely fabulous bonus that would cover the whole thing.
yeah, and then in Lexus we call that a one lease payment.
Oh.
Could pay it all up front.
Okay. So, by the way, one of the things that has caught people unawares is that, so the licensure rules changed with CHOWs, with changes of ownership, where basically if you have a stock purchase, something like that, it's not. I mean, the only time it changes is if the EIN changes,
Okay.
the employee identification number. Not so much with Medicaid contracts. Those are still under the old rules, where old definitions, where basically 50% or more of the ownership changes is a CHOW. One contract goes away, another contract is, they call it an assignment, it's not an assignment. Basically, the old contract goes away, a new contract comes online, and I didn't realize that the rate enhancement changed with that too.
Yep.
It makes sense.
So there's a little exit succession planning to be done there, because how many agencies do we know where it was first generation handed down to second generation? Like, you need to plan that out where 5% or less change doesn't trigger, or is it 50%?
Less than 49% and less.
So then, like, if it's a family trying to hand it down to their children, they need to do it over years. Give them 20%, 20%, 20%. It'll keep that contract intact.
Yeah.
So when Ms. Shirley passed, that contract all got reassigned and new.
Well, and the problem with that is when the new contract comes out, it's a provisional contract. It's not like the ones that they have now. They're open-ended. There is Medicaid revalidation, but they're open-ended, which, in other words, what it does is if there's problems early on in the life of that contract,
Can they get shut down?
It's more easy to shut them down. Whereas with a open-ended contract, they can, the only time they might lose it is at revalidation time, which we're in the midst of right now.
I hear a lot of that. That's a whole nother episode, because I need some education on that as well. But this popped in my head because I was a little bit surprised. There seemed to be a lot of newer providers, and they didn't even know what rate enhancement was. And then, or they'll hear about it and they'll go apply and they'll get it, but they had no idea they had to spend the money in a certain way. And it's got to go to that direct care. But you got to really know what it is. Now, the great thing is, once you figure your spending requirement, that number doesn't change all year long. You can measure it every month. When you run payroll, you can measure it every quarter. It's very easy to measure and monitor. You do not need a hire professional to do it. Maybe you need somebody to set up a simple calculator and a spreadsheet for you and show you how to do it. But it's real easy to manage and monitor. It's a great program to be a part of, to get that extra reimbursement, because then you can pay your attendants more and therefore keep them. Okay. This was my favorite, though. In the last round of cost reports, the bane of my existence are those stairs cost reports. I hate them. You'll get a flag, it calculates, and you'll get an error, kind of a flag, and it'll say, so the one I was getting was the wages of, and I don't know the exact numbers, but like $11.15 was the amount, the wages paid for attendance is higher than the 11.13 that it should be. Like, they're telling you what you should be paying, but what they've done is they built these flags into the system to try to keep it accurate and flag you if you're paying somebody too much, right? My point is, but it's less than their spending requirement, because spending requirements went up so much because of that minimum wage, that change in wages. And I'm like, they're required to spend at their spending level, which is higher than your $11.13. Y'all don't know how hard it is for me to not be super freaking snarky in some of those responses because I had to type a little comment in there. And I'm like one time it was, so your FICA taxes has to be 7.65% of your wages.
So if you have an exception or whatever, you have to have a reason.
So it says, why are FICA taxes not 7.65%? Your number is, and I'm not kidding, it was 7.64326785. I'm like, it's freaking rounding. I don't know. I can't put pennies in the system. And like, I wanted to go off, but there are things I can't say.
Well, it's a computer system, so.
I know, but they'll block out flipping off emojis, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've tried some stuff.
That does not surprise me.
I had a Facebook memory pop up from like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was on the lake. It said I'd had a bad day. I needed some water therapy. ThankYouBill.com, which processes accounts payable. And it said the word that your chat system wouldn't let through was bullshit. So I'm fighting with them on chat. And so I typed bullshit and it was just all blacked out. And I was like, they won't let me cuss at him. But that cracked me up. I saw it on a memory on Facebook this weekend. So anyways.
It's so funny in all the lawyer work. Well, I can't think of any. We don't have any systems. We don't have anything like that where we would have to chat amongst each other, or anything like that. So
the STAIR system, I hate it. But it flags you with all this stuff. I've gotten pretty smooth at it, but it does. And I can't remember the exact numbers, but I feel like this provider's average wage was $11.27, and they were saying it shouldn't be more than $11.20. I'm like, but you almost got to be $11.20 to meet spending requirements now. And we have a very standard higher wages are paid to attract, retain, and recruit, retain, and whatever good attendance. And it's like, what are they going to argue with? But you got to put something in there.
Yeah, the only equivalent I have is like Allison was one of my coworkers recently told by the firm she couldn't use certain language in emails anymore. It was unprofessional.
Yeah,
it was sort of dirty, but
I fall victim of that pretty regularly. ChatGPT, can you clean this up for me? Can you make it softer? That works great for me.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You can write it out and then copy and paste it in there and say, can you make this a happier tone or a more peaceful tone, or can you tone it down? Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I almost used it for the vowels, but then I didn't.
Okay. Well, anyway, do we have anything else on this issue?
That's all I can think of on rate and enhancement, other than a weird little thing happened this year that I've never seen. And we're talking about how shorthanded HHSC is. So the rate enhancement or the rate analysis department is also shorthanded. So this year,
there's also a lot of turnover there too.
They've done a sampling. So this year, there was a change probably 4 or 5 years ago that every other year is going to be a full cost report. And then in the off year, it's just an accountability report. Accountability report only applies to those in rate enhancement. And so this year, this year is accountability only report. And some of our providers do not have one due. They participate and they've always filed one. But the state has said, we're going to take a sampling and not everybody will be required to supply one. And so I have theories. I come up with theories. And so my theory on this is, I don't think it's a random sampling at all. I think they're looking at their system to see who has the most adjustments on the cost report and who has the most, like when we go through desk review and they say, hey, you underreported units by 20%. If you're commonly not reporting it exactly correctly, I bet you weren't in the selection to be excluded.
Well, I mean, they didn't say it was a random sample, did they?
I don't remember. I'd have to read that
provider
provider
recently,
letter.
I don't think they have to tell you it's a random sample in some of the stuff I do. But anyway, but they do use analytics more for that kind of thing. And
it would make
select
sense
samples.
to me.
They pull samples based on analytics.
And the couple of them that they said didn't need to have always, like, their units of service are super dialed in.
Mm-hmm.
So I could plug this then. That would be a great incentive for you to really clean up your EMR Vesta, because I can only go off of what Vesta says. But there's so many times, Vesta or whatever you use, there's so many times you, the provider, are calling it a Star Plus, non-waiver unit of service, but then the state is like, that's not right. That was a dad's unit. Like, it gets confusing. It's real messy. And sometimes we can't even reconcile it, but sometimes we can, sometimes can't. So garbage in equals garbage out. If you got a good system that's super reconciled and dialed in, you may get selected to not have to report 1 year. So
interesting.
But yeah, that was new to me. So
okay.
I was like, all right, cool. So
yeah, I've never known them doing something like that with any of those programs.
But they said it was because they were short-staffed.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually one of the reasons they came up for pulling samples in any type of work like that is just the volume.
Yeah. Yeah. They could probably process a lot more accurately and efficiently if they had
say something mean, are you?
Better qualified staff.
Okay, well, I thought so. There you went. Okay, you got us kicked off YouTube. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, all right. Just bear in mind their staff are they're not CPAs, and they may or may not be degreed accountants.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all I got. That's all I got about rate enhancement, guys. So
all right.
We will see you next time. Thanks, y'all.
Thank y'all for joining us.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Home Care Experience with TNA. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found it insightful. You can find more episodes of the Home Care Experience wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We'd love it if you could share this podcast with your network and/or leave us a review. It really helps us reach more people who are passionate about home care and hospice. Visit thehomecareexperience.com for links and resources in the show notes. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference in the lives of those you serve.